Let's go. Nope.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Sorry, Kevin, unmute. I accidentally muted you instead of someone else.
All right. Got
There
me
you
now?
go. Sorry.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is Kevin and Amy Potas. We're coming to you from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We wanted to spend a bit of time. I really want to share with you, I think, what's become a bit of a passion of mine after a couple of incidents, and I'll give you those a little bit of a background. So, one of the things I work for a large company that's focused on biotech, and one of the things that we really focus our people is how do you create habits that last? How do you change bad habits? How do you move from what are productive habits and keeping them productive? How do you find rewards in those habits? And in fact, been through a bit of a seminar related to this. I wanted to share some of those things that came from that. If anybody's had the chance to read James Clear book, Atomic Habits, I think you'll find a lot of very practical things that you can apply pretty early on. And I'm going to talk a bit about some of those. I think one of the first things that we'll talk about, how do you create a positive environment where you can focus on creating habits that give you a cue, that give you a reward in doing so. And it's really not about, the habits itself are an entry point. And it's not the goal, it's the enter point that ultimately leads you to your goals. And I'm going to ask you throughout this, as you think about some of the things that we're going to discuss tonight, don't be afraid to put in the chat some of the things. Maybe they were a bad habit and something that you did and that you wanted to create a new identity in what you did and turned that into a good habit. And I'll share some things with you, just some personal experiences that I found very helpful. And there's small little incremental changes I think ultimately lead to the goal. So we're going to talk a bit about atomic habits, really tiny changes that make remarkable results. So if you think about why do habits matter, and we all have them. If you sat down, and actually I shared a guide in One Person Big Difference, and Tanya tagged it, so you'll see at the top, there's a guide for you. It's a workbook to be able to work through some of the habits you have today and be able to measure that. Is that a good habit? Is that a bad habit? Is that, I don't know. Because habits are really the compound interest of self-improvement. And our small actions repeated daily is what shapes the results. Again, small actions that are repeated daily are what shapes the results. And quite frankly, we think about as we move into 2026, I always love the fact, hey, what's your New Year's resolution? So that's a thing, like I'm gonna achieve this. This is the goal that I'm going to achieve, and this is when I want to do it by. Or what's the one of the most common that we have after a little holiday dining? Multiple times a day, and sweets and cookies and bars and chips and Chex Mix, which goes down in large quantities at our house, is we think I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to join a gym, or I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to focus on fitness, I'm going to lose weight. That's the goal that you have in mind. But the success comes from the systems that you put in place to make it sustainable. So we all know that gym memberships, the attendance at gyms, walk in on January 2 and see how many people are at a gym, and then walk in on January 30 and see what that attendance looks like then. There's a remarkable change. And it's because the goals sometimes we have are so big that we don't have a system to put in place to make small incremental changes bit by bit over time and creating good habits from that. And I'll share a couple of those things as we move along. So if you think about it, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you actually fall to the level of your system. So if you think about goals versus system, goals actually focus on the outcomes you're trying to achieve. Systems focus on daily processes and what daily processes you put into place, because better systems, and you think about no matter what you do, if you have a system of how you go about cleaning your home, you have a system about how you organize a day, if you have a system about how you approach your work, if you have a system and you're improving that system, it's going to lead to better results. And it's about the same sustainability of beating those systems or having those systems work for all of you. So if you think about here are 4 areas of creating what's called a habit loop. The first is the cue. It's actually a trigger that starts the behavior. And I take that cue, and then the craving is what's the motivation behind that habit? I'm going to give you some examples coming up here. And then the third step is the response. What's the action that you take? So you have the cue. This is cueing me to do this. This is craving because I want to get this result. And the reward is I've got to take what that benefit is I gain over time. So it goes in 4 quadrants, right? It starts with a cue. It moves to your craving, which means the motivation behind your habit. It's the response, the action that you take based on that craving, and then a reward, which is the benefit that you gain. And that is the habit loop. So if you think about, here's a visual about 4 basic laws of behavior change. And I've got to move my pictures over here a bit. But the first is how do we make it obvious, right? And we talked about that cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. This habit loop is how do I make it obvious? And if we have obvious behavior changes that we can make, we can actually stack good habits upon good habits upon good habits. And that's called habit stacking. So how do I make it attractive? How do I make it that it's motivating me to do so? And you think about, you're going to combine what you want to do with what you must do, right? You combine what you want to do with what you must do. And I'll talk a little bit about the 2-minute drill. One of the best ways to start good habits, if you have a task that you can do in under 2 minutes, don't wait. Do it now. Don't wait till later. If you can do it now in 2 minutes or less, if you think about this, I have this in front of me. Can I do this in 2 minutes or less? And if you can, it's best to get those things done and right out of the way. Because why? The why is because you get a reward. There's a feeling of satisfaction. You accomplish something, right? You marked it off your list and you say, hey, of the things that I have to do, what is going to take me the 2 minutes or less? Because you're really beginning with the smallest pieces in actually the version of that good habit. So you start with small things to create good habits. And then, what can make it satisfying, right? If you think about bad habits, it's like, can we hide bad habits? Bad habits basically have a negative connotation or association with them. And we tend to complicate what bad habits look like. If we keep repeating bad habits, it tends to complicate what we're having on. So if you think about what we put in front of us to eat, right? It may have some immediate satisfaction. That pizza tastes good, the chips taste good, the ice cream, oh, I love that flavor. And if I create that and continue that habit over time, what it's going to lead to, right? There's going to be some unhealthy outcomes that complicate what I had in the beginning in the first place. And then what we don't also want to do is we don't want to punish ourselves. So how do we make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying, right? And there are things that we can do. We can implement, we can take initiations between what we want to do. I'll give you one example, right? So if your goal is to have a consistent workout plan every day, one of the things that I do, that I started doing, is I'm fortunate to have a workout facility in my home where I have basically all of the equipment that I need to be able to work out. So one of the things that I do is I have my shoes down there. They're untied. I have socks waiting there. I have shorts, and I have a shirt. I have a towel. I have my hat. I have all the things that I need, and I fortunately have a sauna inside my home, so I basically can take my sauna towel down with me. And when I hit the stairs to go downstairs, I know I'm going to be successful because I'm not going to stop. And everything that I have is sitting right there available for me to do my workout. So I created a habit where I have all of my things ready. One of my friends shared with me that she knows if she didn't untie her shoes, she was not going to get up and get moving into her daily habit of trying to get a 10, 15, 20-minute workout in. And she said she put her shoes by her bed and made sure that they were untied. And if she forgot to untie them, that was a trigger for her that it was just one extra step that was often an excuse. She wasn't ready. So I try to prepare myself to be ready, and it creates some consistency. What are some other things that you have? If anybody has a Peloton out there, one of the immediate gratifications that you get is when you complete a workout, if you go to your profile, it will show you the number of days that you've worked out consecutively, right? So if I do a 15-minute workout and I complete it, if I go to my calendar in my profile, it's going to have a red connotation knowing that I've completed that workout that day. So how satisfying is it when you go from day 1 to day 2, but then now you go from day 7 to day 8 to day 15, and you've marked that off every day. Now, if you're traveling or gone or doing something that, you've got to find how do you make that consistency. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to create a habit that this is a cue. The cue is I have my things ready to go. There's no excuse. I'm not looking for them in the morning. All I have to do is wake. The other thing we have, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. What's the name of the alarm that we have?
The hatch.
The hatch. So we have a hatch alarm. And one of the things about the hatch is and I would highly recommend it to anybody that has it, you can set different wake up times. But 30 minutes before that wake up time, they actually have a light that's associated with like the rising of the sun. So if you have a 7 o'clock alarm, your actual light is going to start to illuminate about 6:30, right? So if we think about that, then we can say, hey, this is a cue that I know this time is coming, and this is going to allow me some time to mentally prepare that I've got to be down there by 7 a.m., and it's giving me a short amount of time. But what's one of the things that, if y'all think about this, I want you to think about this in the morning. Every morning when you wake up, the first 30 seconds of what you do will determine what you do for the next hour, right? So if my goal is to focus on my spirituality and I want to read a Bible, that's a habit that I want to form. I want to start up waking up, thanking the Lord for all the blessings that we have in our life. And I want to read a Bible verse. Guess what happens if my first open is ESPN or Instagram, right? I'm going to get sucked into a habit that's really going to take me away from what I want to do. So that first 30 seconds of what I do when I wake up in the morning, the next hour of my day is that's really going to determine the next hour, right? So what do I do with the first things that I have in the morning, right? So if you think about those little tiny changes of saying, hey, I'm going to do this, or maybe it's some meditation that you want to do. Heck, you can lay in bed and meditate, right? It's all a choice of what you want to make for that 30 seconds, and that's going to determine what you do for the next hour. So think how critical that first 30 seconds of once you wake. So for me, I want to make sure when that light goes on, I'm preparing mentally. I got to stand up and walk into our bathroom that's ultimately going to grab my towel and off I go. So if I don't do that, and I hit ESPN app and I start looking at all the updates from what I felt like I missed the day before, then that's going to likely suck me in and probably delay my time to start my workout plan, right? So if you think about, I've got to create an environment, right? And I've got to basically scale it down so I can be successful. And what's my entry point? In my example I shared with you of me going to gym, my entry point is I know where my towel is. I know where my things are. I don't have to gather it. It's all there from the day before. So if I've gone down and done my workout and I've come and I've brought all that and I've thrown it into my dirty clothes, the next thing I do is go down and replenish it because I know that my next day is prepared for that same habit that I want to build. And one of the things I've just found like over probably the last 45 days is by having those little habits, I basically had a consistency where I have not missed. I have not missed that because I created a cue, a reward, and a habit that's going to allow me to be successful in this. So if you want to think about, it's really about optimizing the starting line. It's not about the finish line. right? My goal is to be more fit. My goal is to lose some weight. My goal is to eat healthier. Guess what it all starts with? The first 30 seconds of my day and what I choose to do, because that's going to lead into the rest of what I do. So I make it obvious, I make it attractive, I make it easy to do, and it's satisfying. How satisfying is it? Hey, you say, I want to go for a walk for 30 minutes. When you get home, how many times have people said, man, why am I not doing that more often? I feel so good when I get out and walk for 30 minutes, right? Because the reality of what I found in my life by creating these good habits and these cues that allow me to do so, it helps me avoid the bad habits. And what bad habits are, typically they start with excuses, right? I don't have time to do this. And if you're anybody like us, the later the day goes, the harder it is to get that habit complete, right? And it may be a small thing, but if you let it linger and move on. So think about how you prepare for your business on a daily day. Think about how you communicate with your team. Think about how you conduct what you need to do personally. Think about how you conduct what you need to do professionally. In the guide that I shared, this workbook, you're going to have the opportunity to list, and I would encourage you to make it as detailed as many pages as you want. You're going to list all of your habits. So think about the second you wake up. What are your habits? What do you consistently do time and time again? And work all the way through to when you go to sleep. And jot down all those habits, and you're going to actually score those habits as a positive habit, a negative habit, or I don't know. It's kind of in between, right? So if you think about how can I eliminate some of these bad habits, or how can I leverage some of these good habits, right? So if you think about, we want to create, most of us think about the person that we want to become, right? So we have an identity, it's based on our habits. So if you think about things like, because think about true changes really begins with the identity. It's like, who do you want to be? Who am I now? Who am I striving to be? And if you, at the end of the day, of the things that you do, if you had to put a vote in, or somebody put a vote in on that habit, would that habit then be reflective of the person that you want to be? So I have to ask myself, who is the type of person that does this? So if you think about, here's some top 10 daily habits to improve productivity on the right. So make a morning routine. I talked about that, right? And Amy knows full well that if that morning routine starts slipping into the afternoon, the likelihood of it happening is starting to diminish by the minute, right? Because I have created, there's more things that get in your way, because if you create a routine and you stick to routine, you're going to avoid things getting in the way. So keeping a to-do list, one of the things, I don't have this with me and I'm happy to share it with somebody, but I also have this electronic to-do list. And I have it categorized. It's primarily around my work and what I do, but it's things that I need to talk to the people that I report to. It's things that I need to talk to the team. It's phone calls that I need to make. It's meetings that I need to schedule. And what that to-do list does, it allows me to prepare for the discussions I'm going to have. Tanya did a really cool thing, and I know she shared this on One Person Big Difference. It's daily modes of operation, right? And if you think about it, it's really a to-do list of what things that you need to do and to follow up on. So how can I do these things, but also focus on the things that I need to do for myself? And I think the one thing that I love is every day when I go down and I finish that workout, and I'm going to give you a habit that Amy kind of gives me a little grief about now and then, but I don't mind watching a little TV show. She said, it's awesome until you want to do that at like 11:30. That's when you want to start that. So I decided, hey, what will continue to help me create a good habit is I can do two things at the same time. If I want to watch a little Netflix movie just to kind of be mindless, right? I put it on in my treadmill and I walk and I watch that for my 30 minutes, which equals about 2 miles. If I'm walking at a pretty good pace, then I'm kind of satisfying that little craving maybe that I have, but I'm executing my plan to conduct the exercise. Now you can do all kinds of different things. So maybe it's something you enjoy. Maybe it's some relaxation. Maybe it's a podcast. maybe it's all those things. But if I want to listen to more podcasts and I want to exercise, why wouldn't I try to do those at the same time? Because then that would be called habit stacking. What I'm doing when I'm watching a Netflix movie and exercising, I'm kind of really only leveraging one habit, right? The other one you could say, is that a habit or is that just some pleasure, right? And it's probably not a positive habit, but if there's two things that you want to do is, how can I do these that actually stack good habits upon good habits upon good habits, and then celebrate the small victories? As I mentioned to you, when I'm done with that 2-mile walk, I can go look at my Peloton calendar and look and see, wow, all right, got it done. That's 5 days in a row. If I was gone Saturday, then, that's 2 days in a row, okay? If I make an excuse, guess what? That's not going to be on my calendar. It's going to be blank. So that's a reminder to me that the reward would be there if I took the initiative to do that. Now, I've tried to find my ways of how do I do something differently. And you can, again, think about all the different habits or things that you really want to become. And to me, health and fitness is kind of at the top of the chain for me, is because if I focus on my relationship with God and my relationship with my family and my relationship between health and wellness, I'm setting myself up for success. So those are the three most important things in my life. And that's what I need to focus my energies on. And I know it's contagious, right? I don't want to not go down to the gym when Amy goes to yoga, right? Because she's committed. That's something part of her plan. Well, why? I don't want to let her down by not backing my own plan up and saying, because if I make an excuse, guess what? It's going to encourage her to make an excuse. And guess what? If you're leading a team here, if you make an excuse, it's just going to set your team up to make an excuse. So own it, find a cue, find a reward, take the action, and you'll get the result. So how do I learn something new every day? We have all kinds of opportunities. If you think about the podcasts that LifeVantage has, the readings on products that we have, listening to an opportunity meeting, hearing somebody talk about the invite, hearing somebody talking about how they use third party. How do I learn something new that I can apply, right? And I can also help, I want to reduce stress. I want to reduce screen time, right? I'm in a profession where I spend a lot of time during the day on Zooms and on the phone. And at the end of the day, my first take isn't, hey, what's going on Facebook or Instagram, right? I've already had plenty of screen time. I'm trying to eliminate some of the screen time. So, this meditation, and I think the reality is, if you want a good habit, because I'm asking myself, who is the type of person that does this? And if you surround yourself with people that do the things that you want to become, the likelihood of you doing it just goes up dramatically, right? If I want to spend a bunch of time with people that don't exercise, then guess what's likely going to happen? It's going to reduce the amount of times that I exercise. And those are some things. So these are kind of some of the 10 daily habits that we can all get. Now, this is a bit of a busy slide, but if you think about some of the application for leaders here, or if you're in the process of working to build a team, or you're thinking, how do you surround yourself? How to create a positive environment for the team I'm around? So building this daily consistency is more important than these short bursts of motivation, right? If you think about it, at the end of the month, how often are people racing to try to get as many orders fulfilled, help their team get orders fulfilled? It's the 31st of the month. We've got until midnight, our time, whatever that is. And then what happens on the 1st? It's like, hello, where is everybody? It becomes really quiet, right? Because we've worked off a burst of motivation versus consistency, right? So if you model these short bursts of motivation versus consistency, your team is going to model that same behavior. So model habits that you want your team to adopt, because small actions compound into leadership momentum. On the right shares a little bit of, sometimes, we think about it. The first example is, what's the benefit, right? If you think about, hey, I'm going to sacrifice to perform good behaviors, like I'm going to go to the gym after a long day of work, requires you to pay an upfront cost that you know over time it's going to provide long-term benefits, right? If you indulge in bad behaviors, like skipping workouts to watch that Netflix show that I'm talking about, or I'm going to eat a bunch of comfort food because it just sounds good. You know, you kind of spike a benefit or maybe some short-term enjoyment, but there's long-term costs of doing those things over time, right? So a benefit to your life is with temptation building, like watching a favorite TV show only at the gym, like I talked about. You can get the short-term benefits of indulging in something, but you actually have the long-term benefit that results from practicing good, healthy habits consistently, right? So don't worry about indulging in something, but what good habit can you do at the same time, right? And no matter what that is, right? Maybe if you're watching something and you're thinking about, hey, who do I need to contact? I can sit down and make a list of people that I need to contact while indulging in something that I like, or indulging in something maybe gives me the short-term enjoyment. Therefore, I'm not canceling out everything that I'm doing. I'm utilizing my time. So if you think about it, some of the takeaways that I would talk to you about are, it's really about starting small, staying consistent, and let habits drive your long-term success. And in this workbook that I shared with you on One Person Big Difference, you have an opportunity to kind of read through and walk through some of the steps. And it's kind of like building a contract with yourself. And I would tell you, share it with somebody. If you're trying to create a good habit, if you don't have somebody to reinforce and give you support when you do that, your chances of staying consistent are really they're minimal. Honestly, if you just on your own, if you think you're going to do all this on your own, and we talked about even LifeVantage, this isn't an I business. This is a we business, right? This is an opportunity for all of us to actually find the key to success, and it takes you closer to your goals by building systems and doing so. So, you know, because basically your change results, the change that you make results in a new identity. So, you know, bring that reward into the present moment. Make sure you create a positive environment. How to create a positive environment, right? I talked about it. Like, I'm going to set myself up on the front end so that I don't have to think about it the next day. It's all ready to go. Right? So if you think about the behaviors that you want to strive to and you want to work to become, then focus on what are the short-term things that I can do. And if there's anything that I can do in 2 minutes or less, I need to do that, because I need to make sure I create a positive environment. I need to make sure I scale down what that looks like in those habits, not making them these complex things. How do I scale it down to simple things that I can do each and every day, and make sure I have an entry point? What's my entry point to do so, right? So if you think about the things that you do, make sure you step back and assess, what is your habit? And some of those habits may change on a daily basis, but I bet there's some consistency that you have almost every day that you do. So how do I wake? What's the first 30 seconds I do? How do I work through that entire time, work through my whole day? And that guide, if you guys put that into action, I think you'll see some very positive things. There's some really good tools that you can implement right now. They're not complicated. And I bet there's some good habits. And I don't know if you've seen anything in the chat, Amy, that people, if you could maybe just share briefly, if there's a bad habit, maybe an example of how you've turned that into a good habit.
Well, lots of people talking about what they start doing in the morning, you know, walking 2 miles. So everybody, I love that everybody was kind of sharing what they're doing, and lots of people saying that they like the workbook, that they check that out. Gail says morning red light therapy, lymph drainage, and stretching. Dawn says habit stacking is my favorite, which I think that's one that you talked about that sometimes you don't even think about, but it makes a lot of sense. If you can stack a couple habits, just sets you up for even more success. So.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, folks, if you think about it, the one thing that we have in control is how we spend our time. And time is one of the most precious commodities we have in our life here on earth. How do we want to spend our time? And if you're not spending the time that's productive, then find ways to to make incremental steps. And maybe it's a small thing, right? And I think somebody just put it in my problems at night. I get sucked into the TV. There's this button on that remote that actually you don't have to turn it on, right? And if I say, hey, well, maybe I'm just going to do that one night, or maybe I'm going to do that 2 nights, and I'm going to give myself some grace, but I'm going to create a pattern that allows me to say, instead of watching TV, I'm going to do this. Right? So set yourself up for success. They say, I'm going to do this, and this is instead of doing this, right? So I'm creating a habit, and it does take some time, folks. I mean, I've made more excuses over time than I can think of, and here I am, all the years that passed, and you think, hey, I want to take these small steps in doing things, and everybody has the capability here, and I think the ability is, surround yourself with the people that are going to motivate you to do good things. Find an accountability partner to help you stay focused on what that outcome that you're looking for, because I know it's the goal, but the question is, what's the system that you're putting in place to reach that goal? And so beyond just, hey, I want to grow my business, or I want to share these products, or I want to learn more about health and wellness, it's the small little things that are compounded over time that help you build systems to do so. So that's what I wanted to just talk with you all tonight. I think this is an opportune time to start assessing 2025 and thinking about, what are the small things, what are some of these scaled down things that I can do that in essence, and I like that, Dawn, these are non-negotiables, right? And I think those are really an opportunity to say, hey, what's my non-negotiable? But I guarantee most of you, it all starts within the first 30 seconds of your day. That first 30 seconds of your day is going to determine the flow of what that day looks like. So anybody have any questions or comments?
This was so valuable, Kevin. It's just sad that we couldn't get more people on in such a busy week. This was so good. There's still time left in the new year or in the rest of the year, and even going into the new year, like those first few days. I hope that everyone doesn't just listen to this and doesn't open that workbook. Like, if anything, the hardest part, make it a tiny habit to literally print it out and give yourself the grace and the time to actually go through it. And I mean, imagine if you really followed through with what Kevin is saying. Imagine if you really looked at that workbook and you assessed where you're at and where you want to be. Imagine how you could change how the next year looks to you, because how many of us year to year end the year and we're like, oh my gosh, I didn't move the needle. Nothing moved. And it all goes back to our habits.
Yep. And you think about it, Rosa, I want to get to you. Go ahead. You have your hand up.
It's a basic question. Thank you, Kevin. This has been very informational and very valuable, so I appreciate this. But my basic question is, I haven't read the book yet, but I will. What is stack habits? I see that expression being said in the chat line, and I'm not quite sure. I think I know what it is, but can you expand a little bit of what that looks like, and some example maybe?
Yeah, so I could think of a couple of things. If you say, hey, I want to do 30 minutes of cardio, right? That be walking. It could be stretching. It could be whatever. But at the same time, I'm going to lift. So if I do 30 minutes of cardio, I want to create enough time that I also do 30 minutes of lifting. And in the meantime, I've thought about my meal prep before I've started any of it. So I'm stacking 3 habits on top of each other. So I'm going to walk for 30 minutes. I'm going to lift for 30 minutes. And I know exactly what I'm going to have for breakfast. And I've created enough time so that I can do all that before I start what I really need to do in my schedule. So I've stacked 3 good habits. And maybe that meal is a high protein meal, right? So you want to drive protein. I think Patricia, a good thing she talks about, like she wants to do some journaling. So she wants to, when she has her morning coffee, it's her time for maybe some meditation, and maybe some journaling. So you think about, how can I stack 2 or 3 things on top of one another? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does. So it's kind of like if you're power walking and you're listening to an audio book, that's kind of a stack. If you're power walking and you have weights on your shoulders and you're doing some weight training while so it's just adding things so that you're more effective and you're better using your time, and your quality of time kind of stretches.
Correct. And you're working towards that identity of what you want to become. Right? The question is that habit stacking working towards the identity of who you want to be? And I think the other thing is, like, what are some of the other people that are doing? Who are the people that do some of this? And I think at times we need to be asking those questions, like, what else could I be thinking about to stack another good habit? Or maybe I've also got this bad habit. If I haven't had enough protein in the course of my day, I will resort to some level of maybe non-healthy food, right? All of a sudden, I've stretched out the amount of what I've time for me to eat, and then I'm going to come to 7 o'clock, go, hey, let's go have pizza, right? And that choice is not going to be a high protein meal, but I've not prepared and I've not done what I needed to do. So and now I'm taking this kind of quick route, and I've kind of thrown everything out the window. But I do think there's some times where you've got to also reward yourself for the things that you enjoy, right? It's not about changing everything about you and all the things that you like, but it's about the consistency of what I do day in and day out, so that becomes a reward, not something I fall back on as a habit that's not necessarily healthy. And I know I'm talking a lot about health and wellness, and maybe it's because, to me, the foundation of our mind and our thinking and what we put our energy to is really going to have an impact on the identity that we want to be. So I would encourage, again, Rosa, in One Person Big Difference on Facebook, I have put the PDF of this workbook that I'm talking about. It'll actually walks you through everything, and even some of the graphics that you saw on the slide, they're included, so you can kind of think through kind of what do these things need to be. And I would encourage, have these discussions amongst your team. This shouldn't be a one and done exercise, because in able to create good quality habits, it takes discussion, it takes some insight, it takes some ideas, it takes some reflection, all those things that help you become and work towards the person that you want to be. Because the better version of you is going to be better at everything that you do, no matter what that is. So how do we make better versions of ourselves? I think that One Person Big Difference, the theme of that is, how does one person have a big impact? Well, it all starts with our habits. It all starts with the systems we have in place. It's not really about our goals, because the goals should be a reflection over time of the habits that you have. And if you have poor habits, I can guarantee you're probably not hitting the goals that you want to. Okay. So step back and think about it. I think this is, again, a good time to assess 2025 and look ahead to 2026, but don't make a bunch of wholesale changes. Start with little things. How do I make some little incremental things? You're going to start working to these good habits, and then don't be afraid to share them with somebody. Let people celebrate with you. I know at home here, we do a lot of, it's a lot of pat on each other's back about working out or eating well, or, doing some scripture reading, and our life group that we have. I mean, we're trying to take these positive steps to be better versions of ourselves, but also it allows us to be able to better help other people. And I think that's, at the end of the day, what it's all about. So any other questions? All right, I'd encourage you can download that, print it out. You can save it on your computer. You have it under your exposure. If anybody has any questions or even want a discussion around it, don't be afraid to reach out. Love to have some discussion within your groups, and we can come back. And maybe this is a topic we can even revisit every quarter and just talk about, hey, what are some of the habits? What are the habit forming things that we've done? What are we seeing from our teams? What are our teams doing to make some incremental changes? All right, so I hope all of you have a fantastic Christmas season. May the Lord bless you abundantly. Hopefully you have a chance to spend time with loved ones. And and I'm going to do this. I'm going to close us with a prayer. All right. So Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather as a one-person Big Difference team. So blessed to be able to come together to share ideas and to share the hope that you bring to this world. May we celebrate Christmas and the meaning of Christmas with our loved ones, and for those that don't have folks around, may someone have this urge to reach out, look around our oikos, who's spending this time alone, because not every Christmas season is a joyous one, and we need to recognize and help lift people up. And we do all this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, you guys have a fantastic Christmas. Thanks so much for joining tonight. And we will all talk to you very soon. In fact, it may not be quite the new year, but we're getting close. So Merry Christmas. Have a great night. Thanks a bunch.
Great call. Thank you. Christmas.